The car rolled to a smooth stop before the Lin family estate, a residence far grander and more formal than Zeyuan's quiet villa. For Chen Lian, the first impression was its scale. Sweeping stone steps, tall arched windows, servants moving with practiced discretion, and a butler at the entrance who looked genuinely pleased to see them. "Welcome home, young master," the butler said with a respectful bow. Then, turning to her, his expression softened. "Madam, welcome." The word madam made Chen Lian's fingers tighten around the strap of her bag. Zeyuan stepped out first, then extended a hand, not theatrically, not for display, but with a steady, unspoken assurance. After a brief hesitation, she took it. Inside, voices carried from the dining hall. The moment they appeared in the doorway, two people rose to their feet at once. Lin Meilin let out a soft gasp. Lin Zeyuan's face broke into an uncharacteristically broad smile. "My goodness, Lian!" Meilin hurried forward, clasping Chen Lian's hands between her own. "You're really here, so it's all true. You two are truly married." Her voice trembled with warmth. "You can't imagine how happy that makes us." The sincerity in her eyes was so open, so unguarded, that Chen Lian could only blink in surprise. Before she could find her voice, another presence asserted itself. Lin Ruqiang, seated comfortably at the head of the dining table, legs crossed, fingers tapping a lazy rhythm against the armrest. He didn't stand, didn't smile, didn't look surprised. His gaze slid from Chen Lian to Zeyuan, a faint curl tugging at the corner of his mouth, half amusement, half calculation. "So, the prodigal nephew returns," he said smoothly, "and this time with a wife. How unexpected." Zeyuan's expression remained composed, but Chen Lian sensed the tension beneath it. A taut, invisible thread pulled just short of snapping. Meilin shot her brother-in-law a warning look. Zeyuan cleared his throat sharply. Ruqiang merely leaned back, as if the atmosphere itself belonged to him. They moved into the living area, servants appearing quietly with tea. Meilin guided Chen Lian to sit beside her, her gestures natural and protective. "We still remember arranging that blind date for you two," Meilin said with a fond smile. "And then suddenly, marriage. It happened so quickly, we didn't know whether to scold you or celebrate." Zeyuan chuckled. "But we're grateful. Lian, you look like a blessing to this family." Chen Lian flushed, uncertain how to respond. Zeyuan spoke then, his voice steady and assured. "Everything happened naturally, faster than expected, but it felt right." Chen Lian glanced at him. His posture was relaxed, his tone confident. He was calm, more than calm. Because even with the emotional undercurrents in the room, even with his uncle's quiet pressure, the usual chaos of color and noise that crowded his senses was absent. The only thing he perceived clearly was the white gold mist surrounding Chen Lian, soft, warm, precise. Because of it, his thoughts were clear, his words are steady. He could even meet Ruqiang's gaze without the familiar strain. The realization unsettled him. Conversation continued about Lian's work at the museum, her adjustment to married life, until Meilin's voice softened. "Lian," she said gently, resting her hand over hers, "we heard about your mother and your brother. What happened to them?" Her grip tightened slightly. Tragedy like that doesn't fade easily. Chen Lian's throat closed. Meilin squeezed her hand. "But remember this. You have a home now, truly. You haven't lost family, you've gained one. Whatever you carry, you don't have to carry it alone." A single tear slipped down Chen Lian's cheek. Zeyuan's chest tightened at the sight. He reached for her hand, his thumb brushing lightly over her fingers. A quiet, grounding reassurance. Across the room, Ruqiang watched in silence. No sympathy, no interest. Only a cool, detached appraisal, as if human emotions were minor inconveniences. To him, business mattered. Prestige mattered. Position mattered. Feelings, irrelevant. And yet, somewhere he would never acknowledge, he sensed it. Zeyuan's composure, his unnerving clarity, the ease with which he held his ground. That quiet strength posed a far greater threat than any loud challenger ever could. Everything had been going surprisingly smoothly. Warm tea, gentle conversation, Mei Lin's quiet attentiveness smoothing the air, until Lin Ruqiang finally leaned back in his chair, fingers lacing together, eyes sharpening with intent. "So, Miss Chen," he paused deliberately, then let a faint mocking smile surface. "Or should I say Mrs. Lin, where exactly did you two meet?" His tone was light, the challenge beneath it was not. "As far as I know," he continued lazily, "my nephew has never been fond of dates, not even once." Zeyuan's shoulders tensed, just enough to be noticed by someone watching closely. But he didn't interrupt, didn't correct. He turned his gaze to Chen Lian, quiet and steady, giving her space. She drew in a careful breath. She didn't realize this was a test, didn't sense how Ruqiang was searching for inconsistencies, waiting for hesitation. "Oh," she began, voice even. "After the blind date, we both wanted time to think, so we waited." Ruqiang's brow lifted slightly. An invitation, a challenge. "And then," Chen Lian continued, "we met again at my workplace, at the museum. He came there to ask me about a second date." She offered a small, awkward smile. "Everything moved very fast after that. Honestly, it still feels unreal." The lie was simple, too simple. Yet it pressed against her chest, heavy and warm, because she knew the truth. She had been the one who searched for him, had waited outside Dr. Han Yao's clinic, once then again, telling herself it was a coincidence, not hope. Fate hadn't rewarded her patience, and now he sat beside her, solid, present, real. For a moment, Ruqiang ceased to exist. So did the room, so did the careful structure of the lie. Her gaze drifted to Zeyuan, lingering just a heartbeat too long. He looked back. Something struck her chest, hard enough that her fingers curled slightly against her teacup. Zeyuan caught the pause and stepped in smoothly, continuing the story in a tone that was polite, measured, and firm. A tone Chen Lian had never heard from him before. It was confident, unyielding, yet she barely registered his words, only the steady gravity of his presence. It was Mei Lin's gentle touch on her wrist that drew her back. "Lian," Mei Lin said softly, "come with me." The request held no urgency, only care. Chen Lian rose and followed her through the corridor and into the garden. The air shifted immediately, cooler, softer. The space was filled with flowering vines and carefully arranged pots, roses climbing trellises, jasmine curling along stone walls, orchids sheltered in shaded corners. Every plant was healthy, loved, and intentionally placed. "This is my little world," Mei Lin said with a quiet smile. "I tend to everything myself." Chen Lian looked around, genuinely moved. "It's beautiful." Mei Lin turned toward her then, her expression changing, still warm, but deeper, intentional. "I wanted to speak with you," she said gently, woman to woman, not as your mother-in-law. Chen Lian's breath caught. Mei Lin's eyes held a kind of kindness that didn't demand trust, but made it impossible to refuse. And for the first time, since entering this house, Chen Lian felt something shift. Not pressure, not expectation, but space. Inside the dining room, Lin Zeyuan lifted his teacup, but the movement stalled halfway. Colors, sharp and jagged, it bled into his vision again. A sickly maroon, threaded with an oily, poisonous green, curled around Lin Ruqiang like smoke rising from a fire. Resentment, disdain, malicious satisfaction tightening at the edges. His uncle was eating calmly, but the colors pulsed like a heart beating too loudly. Of course, he's unhappy, Zeyuan thought. He hides it well from everyone, but not from me. Except, he blinked. The colors were too sharp today, too intense, because Chen Lian wasn't beside him. Her white gold mist, the one presence that quieted everything, was missing from the room, and without it, every toxic emotion in Ruqiang flared like a wildfire. His jaw tightened, knuckles whitening around the handle of the cup as he steadied himself. He took a slow breath, grounding himself against the rising storm. Outside in the garden, far from the chaos of emotional color, Chen Lian stood with Mei Lin, under a small pergola woven with jasmine vines. Maylin watched her closely, not interrogating, just caring. Her presence felt warm in a way that made Chen Lian's throat tighten. "Lian," Maylin said gently, "I need to ask you something, and please don't answer out of politeness." Chen Lian blinked. "Are you truly happy?" The question landed too directly, too honestly. For a second, Chen Lian forgot how to breathe. Happy? The word felt foreign. No, maybe new. Her life had been shattered only weeks ago. Everything had changed. Yet living with Lin Zeyuan, his quiet presence, his gentleness born not of affection, had steadied her when she thought she would break. And somewhere in that stillness, something soft had begun blooming inside her. Delicate and unwelcome, and impossible to ignore. A feeling she knew wasn't mutual. A feeling she knew she must manage alone. Her eyes grew warm, but she forced the tears back. Finally, she met Lin Maylin's gaze. "Madam Lin, I am happy," she whispered, voice trembling and sincere. "There is nothing that's bothering me." A lie, but also not a lie. Deep down, she knew exactly what her new concern was, the quiet ache of caring too much for a man who didn't feel the same, and the fear she would ruin everything by wanting more. But she held a small smile, the kind that tried to reassure the other person rather than herself. Lin Maylin looked at her for a long heartbeat, and then she reached out and brushed a strand of hair behind Chen Lian's ear. "You're welcome to tell me anything," she murmured. "Anytime." For the first time in weeks, Chen Lian felt the warmth of family again, not the one she lost, but one she was slowly, unexpectedly stepping into. They returned to the dining room just as Lin Ruqiang set his chopsticks down with a deliberate click, sharp enough to slice through the remaining warmth. His gaze slid toward Lin Zeyuan like a blade being slowly unsheathed. "So, Zeyuan," Ruqiang said mildly, a smile tugging at his lips. "Still busy treating emotions?" Chen Lian froze. Even without understanding the deeper dynamics, she could hear the contempt coiled inside that single word. Ruqiang leaned back, crossing one leg over the other with practiced ease. "Your father keeps insisting you'll take the director's chair soon," he went on lazily. "But tell me, how will you manage a board meeting if a patient starts crying in the hallway?" A soft chuckle followed. "Or do you plan to carry a therapy couch everywhere you go?" The insult landed cleanly. Too cleanly. Chen Lian's breath caught. Lin Zeyuan set his teacup down with controlled precision. No retort, no visible anger. Only silence. Quiet, deliberate, almost immovable. But Chen Lian noticed what others might miss. The faint tightening of his jaw, the tension behind his eyes, the way his gaze avoided Ruqiang. Not in fear, but restraint. Lin Shiren cleared his throat sharply. "Ruqiang, that's enough." But Ruqiang wasn't done. "With your condition," he added, voice sharpening just slightly, "you should stay where you belong, inside the hospital. Let someone else handle the Lin legacy. Someone more capable." Something twisted hard inside Chen Lian. Condition? She didn't know what Zeyuan struggled with, but she understood cruelty when she heard it. Lin Maylin's expression tightened, displeasure clear. "Zeyuan excels at what he does," she said calmly. "A healer's work is nothing to demean." Ruqiang smiled thinly. "I'm only being realistic. Corporations require a certain kind of mind." That was when Lin Shiren pushed his chair back and stood. The room went still. "Sit down, Ruqiang," he said coldly. "You've said enough." For a heartbeat, no one moved. And then, before the silence could swallow Zeyuan whole, Chen Lian stood. The sound of her chair scraping softly against the floor startled everyone. Even Zeyuan looked up. She didn't raise her voice, didn't accuse, didn't flare with emotion. Instead, she smiled, small, polite, devastatingly composed. "Uncle Lin," she said evenly, "you speak as if treating emotions is a weakness." Ruqiang's brow lifted. She continued, voice steady. "But if Zeyuan lacked control, patience, and clarity, qualities essential to his profession, he wouldn't be trusted with people at their most fragile moments." She turned slightly, her posture straight, unwavering. If anything, the fact that he chooses restraint instead of dominance tells me more about his capability than any title ever could. The room held its breath. Lin Meilin's eyes shone, not with surprise, but unmistakable pride. Lin Zeyuan nodded once, firmly. Ruqiang's smile finally cracked. Chen Lian glanced at Zeyuan, then, not seeking approval, just standing beside him. But Zeyuan felt it, the quiet certainty in her words, the instinctive way she shielded him without knowing the full truth, the courage to step forward when he had chosen silence. For the first time, genuine surprise flickered through his calm. So, this is why he realized. Why wouldn't he let go? Why did Ruqiang keep pressing, poking, humiliating? It wasn't about the position. It wasn't even about the condition. It was about control. Because Zeyuan's silence unsettled him, and now, so did Chen Lian. Dinner continued after that, subdued and careful, but the damage was done. That evening, as they finally left the Lin residence, the car ride home was hollow with silence. No warmth, no conversation, just the muted hum of the road, streetlights passing in pale reflections across the windows. Zeyuan sat with his eyes closed, expression unreadable, the ring on his finger catching dull flashes of light. Chen Lian folded her hands in her lap, feeling the weight of everything. Ruqiang's hostility, the pressure bearing down on Zeyuan, and the quiet truths she couldn't escape. This marriage, this visit, this day, all of it was meant to be a performance. She glanced at him once. His eyes remained closed. Two people married, sitting inches apart, yet separated by entire worlds. Flashback. Inside the study, the memory flickered back to him, the moment he sat on the edge of his bed, sharp, unwelcome. He had walked into the study earlier that afternoon, only to find Lin Ruqiang already waiting, lounging in a leather chair, like a king surveying conquered land. A thin trail of cigarette smoke curled through the air, carrying the bitter scent of authority and disdain. So, Lin Ruqiang began, his voice dripping with amusement. You marry quietly, and now you think you can avoid the company forever? Lin Zeyuan had stood with his hands behind his back, posture straight, voice calm. My work is in the hospital. That's where I'm needed. Lin Ruqiang laughed softly, shaking his head. The hospital won't last forever, nephew. Your father will step down one day. Someone has to take his seat. Don't fool yourself into thinking a sudden marriage will keep the board from questioning you. Lin Zeyuan remembered how the colors around his uncle had surged, sharp, predatory red spiraling into a muddy, manipulative gray. Ambition, envy, contempt. He had kept his tone steady. My choices are not an escape. They're simply mine. Lin Ruqiang's smile sharpened. You've grown colder, Zeyuan. Ice can look strong, but remember, cold things crack easily. Lin Zeyuan had reached for the door, not giving him the satisfaction of reacting. So do brittle things, uncle. Lin Ruqiang's chuckle followed him out. We'll see who breaks first. Back to present. Sitting alone in his dim room, the echo of those words still clung to him, not because they hurt, but because they carried truth he couldn't deny. He was fragile, not emotionally, but due to the colors that never left him alone. And yet, today, in that house full of shifting emotions, the only place he saw clarity, the only person who wasn't in chaos, was Chen Lian. Her steady white gold mist still lingered in his memory, calmer than anything else in his world. He exhaled slowly. Lin Ruqiang was wrong about one thing. Lin Zeyuan wasn't hiding behind the marriage. But he realized now he was relying on her presence more than he intended. And that was dangerous. Author's note: this story began with a simple question. What happens when two people, each already broken in their own way, are pulled together not by fate's grand design, but by the quiet, unspoken need not to be alone?